The morning had been unremarkable in its precision. Emma Rodriguez moved through the airport like a ghost, her carefully curated appearance designed to blend into the background of early morning travel. Dark blue blazer, tailored just loose enough to conceal any hint of her true physical capabilities. Charcoal gray slacks with a subtle herringbone pattern. Horn-rimmed glasses that sat perfectly on the bridge of her nose, a deliberate accessory that softened her sharp features and redirected attention. New York's JFK Airport hummed with its typical morning chaos. Business travelers clutched oversized coffee cups like lifelines. Families navigated the labyrinth of security checkpoints. Children trailing behind like reluctant satellites. Luggage. Wheels clicked against polished floors, a rhythmic soundtrack to countless personal journeys. Emma's carry-on was a study in deliberate minimalism, a single slate gray messenger bag, worn just enough to appear professional, but not so much as to draw attention. Inside, meticulously organized, a lightweight laptop, noise-canceling headphones, a single technical manual, and a carefully folded change of clothes. Nothing more, nothing less. Her boarding pass revealed little. Seat 1 for C, an aisle seat on a cross-country flight to Los Angeles. To the casual observer, she was another anonymous professional, another face in the endless stream of travelers who crossed the country daily. But anonymity was her art form, a skill honed through years of training that few could comprehend. As she moved through the security checkpoint, her movements were a masterclass in controlled casualness. Years of specialized training had taught her how to navigate spaces without creating ripples. She removed her laptop with practiced ease, slipped off her shoes, allowed the TSA agent to scan her belongings, a slight smile, a nod, nothing memorable. The gate area was a microcosm of human diversity. A businessman in an expensive suit reviewed spreadsheets. An elderly couple shared a pack of peanut butter crackers. A young mother attempted to quiet a restless toddler. Emma chose a seat near the window, but not at the window, close enough to observe, far enough to remain unremarkable. Her phone remained silent. No urgent messages, no missed calls. Her digital footprint was as carefully curated as her physical appearance. A LinkedIn profile suggested she was a mid-level software engineer in a mid-sized tech company. Social media accounts showed just enough personal information to seem authentic, but nothing that truly revealed her core self. When boarding was announced, Emma waited, not first, not last. She moved with the middle group, her carry-on slung effortlessly over her shoulder. The flight attendant's scanner beeped. Seat confirmed, no special treatment, no second glances. Inside the Boeing 787, she found her seat with the precision of someone who had navigated countless aircraft. Window seat, adjacent to her assigned spot, a young boy sat near her, clutching a worn superhero action figure. His mother looked exhausted, juggling a toddler and multiple bags. "Would you like help?" Emma's voice was soft, professional, just friendly enough to be kind, not so engaging as to invite further conversation. The mother smiled gratefully. Emma helped stow a bag, assisted with securing the toddler's safety belt. Small acts of kindness that would later be forgotten. Invisible assistance. As passengers continued boarding, Emma pulled out her technical manual. Advanced Aerospace Engineering Principles, a text dense with mathematical equations and technical diagrams. To most, it would appear impenetrable. To her, it was light reading. Her fingers traced a complex fluid dynamics equation. Muscle memory from years of training. Each movement calculated, each gesture purposeful. The manual wasn't just reading material, it was a connection to a world she had left behind. A flight attendant approached. Something to drink. Water. No ice. The request was specific, but not unusual. Her eyes met the attendant's for a millisecond, long enough to communicate competence, short enough to avoid prolonged interaction. The plane's interior was a controlled environment of manufactured comfort, recycled air, regulated temperature, the illusion of safety maintained through carefully designed systems. Emma knew better than most how fragile those systems could be. Her watch, a nondescript model that appeared ordinary but contained sophisticated tracking and communication capabilities, showed the time, 7:40 a.m. The flight was scheduled for a smooth, uneventful journey across the United States. But Emma Rodriguez knew better than to believe in smooth, uneventful journeys. As the last passengers settled, as the cabin crew performed their safety demonstrations, she remained outwardly calm. Just another passenger, just another face in the crowd. her true self hidden behind layers of carefully constructed normalcy. Outside the window, the morning light caught the aircraft's wing, metallic, precise, ready to carry its human cargo across vast landscapes. Emma's reflection was barely visible, a ghost of a woman, waiting, watching, preparing for whatever might come. No one on this flight knew who she really was. Not yet. 30 minutes into the flight, the world changed. It wasn't a dramatic shift, not immediately. Just a subtle vibration that most passengers would have dismissed as routine turbulence. But Emma felt it differently. Her body was a finely calibrated instrument, trained to detect the minutest irregularities. The first tremor ran through the aircraft like a whispered warning, a metallic shudder, a breath of uncertainty. To rows ahead, a businessman's coffee cup began to wobble. Ice cubes clinked against glass with an unnatural rhythm. The young boy next to Emma clutched his superhero figure tighter, his mother's hand instinctively reaching out to steady him. Emma's eyes moved, not panicked, not afraid, calculating. Her fingers, which moments ago had been tracing technical diagrams, now pressed subtly against the armrest. Feeling, assessing. The vibration wasn't random. It was systematic, structural. The flight attendants exchanged a look, not the rehearsed, professional glance of routine flight management. This was different. A flicker of genuine concern passed between them, quickly masked, but unmistakable to someone who knew how to read such signals. Captain Michael Ray's voice crackled over the intercom, measured. Control, ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some minor technical turbulence. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Minor. The word hung in the air like a fragile promise. Emma knew it was anything but minor. Her training had taught her to read aircraft like living organisms. Every sound, every movement. The Boeing 787 was speaking a language of distress, and she was fluent in its dialect. The vibration wasn't just turbulence, it was a systemic failure beginning to unfold. The young boy whimpered softly. His mother tried to comfort him, her own hands betraying a slight tremor. Emma noticed everything. The way the overhead compartments seemed to shudder just a millisecond longer than they should. The almost imperceptible change in the engine's pitch. Another flight attendant, Sandra. Her name tag read, moved down the aisle. Her movements were trained to appear calm, but her grip on the service cart was white-knuckled. Professional composure was a thin veneer, and Emma could see the cracks forming. 35,000 feet above the ground, the first real warning came. A sharp bang, not loud, but definitive. The kind of sound that speaks of something fundamental breaking. The cabin pressure shifted, almost imperceptible, but to Emma, it was like a scream. Oxygen masks suddenly dropped, their yellow and white forms swinging like pendulums of impending doom. The mechanical precision of their deployment was both a marvel of safety engineering and a terrifying admission that something was seriously wrong. Panic began to ripple through the cabin, not all at once, not in a Hollywood explosion of terror, but in waves. First, a collective intake of breath, then murmurs, then the rising tide of human fear. Captain Ray's voice returned. This time, the carefully maintained professionalism had an edge, a barely perceptible tremor of its own. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a technical issue. Please remain calm and follow crew instructions. Technical issue, such a clinical term for potential catastrophe. Emma's training kicked in. Not military, not just professional, something deeper. A survival instinct honed through years of navigating impossible scenarios. Her body was already moving, assessing, preparing. The boy next to her started to cry. His mother's attempts at comfort grew more desperate. Around them, the controlled environment of the aircraft was unraveling. Oxygen masks dangled. Personal items tumbled from overhead compartments. The world was tilting, but Emma was already several steps ahead. Her hand moved almost imperceptibly. A device disguised as a simple fitness tracker pressed against her wrist. A communication channel open, encrypted, untraceable, a lifeline to a world few knew existed. The aircraft wasn't just experiencing turbulence, it was dying, and Emma Rodriguez was the only one who understood exactly what was happening. The first true moment of terror was about to begin. Gravity became an enemy. The Boeing 787 wasn't just losing altitude, it was falling. Not the gentle descent of a controlled landing, but a violent plummet that transformed the aircraft into a metal coffin hurtling toward the earth. Screams erupted, not all at once. First, a collective gasp, then a rising tide of human terror that threatened to drown out everything else. Passengers became a living organism of pure panic. Oxygen masks swung like pendulums of doom. Loose items became projectiles, transforming the cabin into a chaotic battlefield. Captain Michael Reyes' voice crackled over the intercom, fragmented, desperate. Mayday, mayday. Hydraulic system complete failure. Left engine compromised. In the cockpit, a nightmare was unfolding. The co-pilot, Tom Martinez, was slumped unconscious, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. The impact of the initial system failure had been more brutal than anyone could have anticipated. Captain Reyes fought against a control system that had become a dead weight. Struggling to maintain any semblance of control, Emma Rodriguez moved. It wasn't a dramatic leap, not a Hollywood hero's moment, just a precise, calculated shift of body and intention, years of training condensed into milliseconds of action. Her eyes no longer hidden behind glasses in a cabin with a predator's intensity. The young boy who had been her seatmate was crying, pressed against his mother. Around them, the world was coming apart. Gravity seemed to have its own malevolent intelligence, pulling the aircraft toward certain destruction. Stay low. Emma's voice cut through the chaos. Not a suggestion, a command. Her hand moved to her wrist. The fitness tracker device, far more sophisticated than any commercial technology, began to pulse. Encrypted signals, communication, channels that existed outside standard protocols. She was no longer just a passenger. The aircraft pitched violently. 187 souls became a collective mass of terror and survival instinct. Emma's mind was already several steps ahead. Hydraulic failure, left engine compromise. The technical details formed a complex puzzle that most would find incomprehensible. To her, it was a language as familiar as breathing. She moved toward the cockpit, not running, not panicking, each step calculated, professional. A predator navigating a terrain of absolute chaos. A flight attendant tried to block her path. Ma'am, please return to your seat. Emma's hand moved. Not to push, not to fight. Just a precise touch that temporarily disabled the attendant's ability to interfere. Years of specialized medical training provided advantages far beyond what anyone could imagine. The cockpit door, locked, standard security protocols. But Emma Rodriguez was anything but standard. A device small, almost invisible, pressed against the electronic lock. Years of specialized training condensed into a moment of precise intervention. The door opened. Captain Reyes was a study in controlled desperation. Sweat mapped territories of fear across his forehead. Multiple warning systems screamed their electronic warnings. Altitude dropping. Systems failing. The aircraft was a metal beast bleeding out its technological lifeblood. I need to help. Emma's voice cut through the electronic chaos. Reyes turned. For a moment, something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, not of Emma specifically, but of someone who understood, someone who could potentially save them. The Rocky Mountains loomed below, a jagged mouth ready to swallow the wounded aircraft. Terrain that showed no mercy, no forgiveness. Emma's hands moved across the complex array of controls. Not guessing, not hoping, executing with the precision of someone who had navigated impossible scenarios countless times before. Hydraulic backup is completely compromised, Reyes muttered. A confession. An admission of potential defeat. Emma's response was immediate. Not completely. There's a manual override in the tertiary system. We can redistribute pressure if we recalibrate the... Another violent pitch interrupted her. The aircraft was more than a machine now. It was a living entity fighting for survival. Outside the cockpit window, the world became a blur of terrain and sky. Mountains rose like prehistoric monsters, waiting to consume metal and flesh. One wrong move meant certain death. One perfect calculation could save everyone. Emma Rodriguez had spent her entire life preparing for moments exactly like this. And now, 35,000 feet above the ground, with death waiting to embrace them, she was about to prove exactly who she really was. The cabin became a theater of revelation. Whispers spread like wildfire. Not panic now, but something more dangerous. Recognition. Pieces of a complex puzzle beginning to assemble themselves. Sandra, the lead flight attendant, was the first to truly see Emma, not as a passenger, not as a potential savior, but as something entirely different. You're military, she said, not a question, a statement. The way Emma moved, the precision of her hands, the absolute calm that radiated from her while the aircraft fought for survival. It spoke a language of specialized training that few could understand. A businessman, retired special forces. His posture betrayed years of military conditioning. Caught a glimpse of Emma working the radio. The coded language, the specific hand movements, the way she communicated without seeming to communicate at all. Fragments of a life carefully hidden began to break through. Emma Rodriguez was not who she appeared to be. In the quiet moments between her interventions, memories flickered. Afghanistan, a medical outpost nestled in the Hindu Kush Mountains. Surgical procedures performed under impossible conditions. Helicopter extractions that defied conventional survival rates. She had been a ghost then. A shadow warrior whose official records were more fiction than fact. Special Forces flight surgeon. Aerospace engineering prodigy. Survivor of missions that existed only in classified files. Each moment of the unfolding crisis peeled back another layer of her meticulously constructed identity. The tattoo on her inner forearm, barely visible when her sleeve shifted, told a story. Coordinates. A set of numbers that meant nothing to most. Everything to those who knew how to read them. The precise location of a mission that officially never happened. Captain Reyes was watching her now, not with fear, with a growing understanding. "How did you?" he started. Emma cut him off. Not rudely, precisely. "Right now, we survive. Stories come later." Her medical training merged with her engineering expertise. The aircraft wasn't just a machine. It was a complex system bleeding out. Every intervention was a surgical strike against certain destruction. A photograph fell from her messenger bag, partially hidden, barely visible, but enough to tell a story. A military base, dust-covered landscape, a group of medical personnel. Emma, younger, harder, with eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine, standing next to a damaged helicopter. The kind of image that spoke of impossible rescues and unrecorded heroism. The young boy who had been her seatmate stared, no longer crying. Fascinated. "Are you a superhero?" he asked, Emma's lips the first hint of a smile since the crisis began. "Witched. Just someone doing what needs to be done." But she was so much more. Her device, the fitness tracker that was anything but ordinary, continued its encrypted communication. Signals bouncing through secure channels. Someone was listening. Someone was tracking. A deeper network was aware of what was happening. The passengers were no longer just victims. They were witnesses to something extraordinary. A woman who had crafted an entire life of anonymity, now forced into a moment of absolute exposure. Military records, classified missions, advanced degrees from institutions that didn't officially exist. A career that blended medical expertise, engineering brilliance, and tactical survival skills. Emma Rodriguez had spent years becoming invisible. Now, 35,000 feet above the ground, with death circling like a patient predator, she was anything but invisible. Flight attendants moved differently around her now, with a mixture of respect and barely contained awe. The businessman who recognized her training nodded a silent acknowledgement of a shared understanding. Her past wasn't just a collection of missions. It was a testament to human resilience. Surgical procedures in combat zones, emergency extractions from regions most wouldn't dare enter, technological innovations that had saved countless lives, all of it hidden behind a carefully constructed persona of an ordinary software engineer. The aircraft pitched again, a violent reminder that survival was still not guaranteed. Emma's focus never wavered. One hand on the radio, one hand on the complex aircraft systems. Her mind calculating trajectories, potential landing zones, system failures with a speed that bordered on superhuman. This was her battlefield now, and battlefields were something Emma Rodriguez knew how to navigate better than anyone. Time became a weapon, with the pilots partially incapacitated. Emma transformed the aircraft's cabin into a command center, her voice calm, authoritative, cut through the chaos like a surgical instrument. "Listen carefully," she addressed the passengers. "Not a request, a directive that broke in no argument. Your survival depends on absolute coordination." The businessman who had recognized her military background stood first, then a retired firefighter, then others, a human network forming with Emma at its core. She divided the passengers into strategic groups. Those with medical training moved to one section, those with physical strength to another. The weakest children, elderly, injured were positioned in the most protective areas of the aircraft. Captain Reyes struggled with the primary controls. Emma's hands moved across secondary systems with a precision that defied comprehension. "Hydraulic pressure at 12%, she muttered. Not to anyone specific. a diagnostic assessment spoken aloud. Her encrypted device continued its silent communication, signals bouncing through layers of secure networks. Someone was listening. Someone was tracking their impossible descent. The Rocky Mountains rose like prehistoric monsters, jagged, unforgiving, a landscape that promised death to any who dared challenge its terrain. Emma's mind was a supercomputer of survival strategies, years of specialized training condensed into milliseconds of decision-making, medical expertise, engineering brilliance, tactical survival skills, all converging in this single moment of absolute crisis. "We're going to redistribute weight," she told Captain Reyes. Not a suggestion, a plan. Passengers moved with precision. Those in first class shifted toward the center of the aircraft. Luggage was secured, potential projectiles neutralized. Each movement calculated to improve their chances of survival. The young boy who had been her seatmate watched with a mixture of terror and fascination. Emma caught his eye, winked, a moment of human connection amid absolute chaos. "What's your name?" she asked him. "Tommy," he responded, his voice barely a whisper. "Tommy, you're going to be a hero today," Emma said. "I need you to help keep everyone calm." Impossible task for a child. Yet something in her voice made it seem possible. Technological systems continued to fail, but human systems, communication, cooperation, collective survival were coming alive. Emma's hands never stopped moving, recalibrating, assessing, intercepting potential system failures before they could fully manifest. The aircraft was more than a machine now. It was a living organism fighting for survival, and Emma Rodriguez was its immune system. Fragments of her past continued to leak through her carefully constructed facade. A tattoo, surgical scars, the way she moved, the absolute certainty in her voice. This was someone who had navigated impossible scenarios countless times before. Ground control attempted communication, fragmented, desperate. Emma's encrypted device provided alternative communication channels, satellite links, backup systems that existed outside standard protocols. "We need a landing zone," she told Captain Reyes. "Minimal terrain interference, relatively flat surface." Her fingers moved across digital topographical maps, analyzing, calculating, the kind of precision that suggested she had done this before, many times. The passengers watched, no longer just victims, now participants in their own survival. The businessman who had recognized her military background moved to assist. So did the retired firefighter. A network of unexpected allies forming around Emma's central strategy. Tommy, the young boy, began helping distribute water, passing blankets, providing a sense of purpose amid absolute terror. Emma's medical training merged with her engineering expertise. The aircraft wasn't just a machine. It was a complex system bleeding out. Every intervention was a surgical strike against certain destruction. Oxygen levels stabilized. Communication channels remained open. The impossible was becoming possible. "We're going to survive this," Emma said. Not a hope, a promise. Her eyes scanned the cabin, assessing, calculating, every movement precise, every decision life-saving. The Rocky Mountains continued to rise, a landscape of potential death transforming into a potential salvation. One wrong move meant certain destruction. One perfect calculation could save everyone. Emma Rodriguez had spent her entire life preparing for moments exactly like this. And now, with death circling like a patient predator, she was about to prove exactly who she really was. The battle for survival had only just begun. Physics became a negotiation. The Rocky Mountain Plateau approached like a predator, vast, unforgiving, waiting to consume metal and flesh. Every second was a calculation. Every movement a battle against certain destruction. Emma's hands moved across the aircraft's remaining systems with a surgeon's precision, not fighting the machine, becoming one with it. "Terrain analysis complete," she told Captain Reyes. Her voice cut through the cabin's ambient terror. "We have a 37-second window of potential survival." The plateau below was not a perfect landing zone, rocky, uneven, scattered with potential obstacles that could transform a challenging landing into instant annihilation. But it was their only chance. Captain Reyes' hands trembled slightly on the controls. Exhaustion, fear, the human limitations that could cost everyone their lives. Emma's hand covered his, not to take control, too steady, to communicate. Together, she said. Their hands moved in synchronization, decades of training, his as a pilot, hers as a field surgeon and aerospace engineer, converging in this singular moment of absolute precision. The aircraft's damaged systems screamed their electronic warnings, altitude dropping, hydraulics failing. The metal beast was bleeding out its technological lifeblood. Passengers. Emma's voice rang through the cabin. Brace for emergency landing. Head down, arms crossed. Stay low. Tommy, the young boy, looked up, no longer crying. Something closer to wonder in his eyes. Are we going to make it? He asked. Emma's response was immediate. We're going to fight until the last moment. The landscape rushed up, not a gentle approach, a violent convergence of gravity and human will. Her encrypted device continued its silent communication, signals bouncing through secure networks. Someone was tracking. Someone was waiting. Fragments of impossible missions flickered through her mind. Afghanistan, Syria, rescue operations that existed only in classified files. This was another impossible moment, another chance to defy the odds. The businessman who had recognized her military background helped secure loose items. The retired firefighter assisted passengers in the brace position, a network of unexpected allies. Transformed by Emma's leadership, vertical descent rate critical, Captain Reyes muttered. Emma's fingers flew across alternative control systems, bypassing damaged circuits, creating emergency pathways that existed only in theoretical aerospace engineering manuals. The plateau grew larger, no longer a distant threat, an immediate landscape of potential salvation or total destruction. Wind became an enemy, turbulence a living entity trying to tear the aircraft apart. We're going to use the terrain, Emma said, not a suggestion, a strategy. Her calculations were beyond conventional landing protocols, using the natural contours of the mountain plateau, transforming potential disaster into a controlled crash. Passengers held their breath, not in terror now, in a collective moment of absolute focus. The aircraft's landing gear partially compromised would be a liability. Emma's solution was radical, unconventional. We're going to slide, she told Captain Reyes. Her hand moved to a series of emergency systems, activating protective measures, redistributing the aircraft's structural integrity in ways that defied standard engineering principles. Tommy gripped his superhero action figure, a talisman of childhood hope in the face of absolute danger. The first contact with terrain was violent, not a landing, an impact. Metal screamed, a sound beyond human comprehension. The language of machines facing ultimate stress. Emma's body became a living stabilization system. Hands, feet, every muscle working in perfect synchronization. Sparks erupted, the aircraft's underbelly grinding against rocky terrain. A controlled destruction that was more controlled than destructive. Passengers remained in position, not by command now, by a collective understanding of survival. Seconds stretched into eternity. The aircraft continued its violent slide, terrain passing in a blur of rock and dust. A dance between human skill and natural brutality, and then silence. Not the silence of destruction, the silence of survival. Emma was the first to move, checking systems, assessing damage, ensuring the impossible had been achieved. Captain Reyes looked at her. No words needed, a moment of absolute mutual understanding. They had done the impossible, saved 187 souls, transformed certain death into a moment of extraordinary survival. Outside, the Rocky Mountains stood as silent witnesses to a landing that would become legendary. Emma Rodriguez, the passenger who was so much more, had once again defied the odds. Silence shattered. The first moments after impossible survival were a symphony of human emotion. Gasps, quiet sobs, the sound of breath raw, desperate, alive. Emma moved with calculated precision. Not a hero's dramatic stride, a systematic assessment of life and potential threat. Nobody move, she commanded. Her voice cut through the cabin's shock like a surgical instrument. Tommy, the young boy, was the first to break the silence. Are we alive? A ripple of nervous laughter. Then more tears. The release of collective terror. Outside, the Rocky Mountains stood as brutal witnesses. A landscape of potential death transformed into an unlikely salvation. Dust settled around the aircraft's broken form, a metal beast brought to rest by human will and extraordinary skill. Emma's first priority was triage. Medical training kicked in. Years of field experience in combat zones condensed into immediate action. Medical personnel, she called out, identify yourselves. The businessman who had recognized her military background was first to respond. A retired Army medic. The firefighter, another set of trained hands. They moved through the cabin, checking injuries assessing potential complications from the violent landing. Her encrypted device continued its silent communication, signals bouncing through secure networks. Someone was tracking. Someone was waiting. Captain Reyes struggled to his feet, bruised, exhausted, but alive. How? He started. Emma cut him off. Not rudely, precisely. Survival first. Explanations later. The aircraft's interior told a story of survival. Overhead compartments torn open, seats displaced, personal belongings scattered like memories torn from their context. Tommy's superhero action. Figure had survived a small miracle amid massive destruction. External sounds began to penetrate. Distant, approaching, rescue teams, but not the kind most would expect. Emma's movements became more calculated. Her encrypted device pulsed with a specific rhythm, a communication pattern that suggested deeper networks were already in motion. The retired medic approached her, recognition in his eyes, not just of her skills, but of something deeper. "You're not just a passenger," he said, not a question. Emma's response was a slight smile. Nothing more. Passengers began to move, shock giving way to a collective understanding of survival. They weren't just victims anymore. They were survivors. And Emma Rodriguez was the architect of their impossible rescue. Outside, the first rescue vehicles approached, not standard emergency responders. Something more specialized. Tommy watched in fascination. "Are you really a superhero?" he asked. Again, Emma knelt to his level. "Sometimes," she said, "survival is the most heroic thing we can do." The medical assessment continued. Minor injuries, shock, but no fatalities. An impossible outcome transformed into reality. Her tattoo, barely visible, told a story. Coordinates, a set of numbers that meant nothing to most, everything to those who knew how to read them. The businessman, the former special forces operator, began to piece together fragments of her identity, specialized training, impossible landing, precise medical intervention, communication networks that existed outside standard protocols. Emma Rodriguez was becoming less of a mystery and more of a legend. Rescue teams approached. Not local, not standard. Their movements suggested something more. Specialized, coordinated. Emma's encrypted device continued its silent dance of communication. Signals bouncing through layers of secure networks. Captain Reyes watched her, understanding beginning to form. This was more than a simple emergency landing. This was a precisely executed operation. The mountain plateau became a stage of revelation. Passengers began to share their experiences. Tommy became an impromptu storyteller, describing how the lady saved everyone. Emma moved with purpose, ensuring everyone was cared for. Maintaining control of the situation, rescue teams arrived. Their movements suggested military precision, not standard emergency response. Emma Rodriguez, a voice called. She turned, calm, controlled. The first rescue operator approached, not with a clipboard, not with standard medical equipment. Something deeper was happening. The impossible landing was just the beginning of a much larger story. Survival was only the first act, and Emma Rodriguez was about to take center stage. The world became a pressure cooker of revelation. News cameras descended like mechanical vultures. Helicopters carved through mountain air. The mountain plateau transformed from a site of potential destruction to the epicenter of a story that would captivate a nation. Guardian of Flight 1237, the first headlines would read. But Emma Rodriguez knew the truth was far more complex. The specialized rescue team moved with a precision that betrayed years of coordinated training, not standard emergency responders. Something deeper, something hidden. Tommy, the young boy who had witnessed everything, stood close to Emma, a silent guardian, a witness to an extraordinary moment. Ms. Rodriguez, a woman in a nondescript government suit, approached. Her movements suggested military training, intelligence, not a standard bureaucrat. Emma's encrypted device pulsed. A silent communication. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. Passengers began to tell their stories, each interview a fragment of a larger narrative. The businessman, the retired firefighter, Captain Reyes, Tommy. Each perspective added another layer to the impossible survival. Medical teams worked efficiently, treating minor injuries, collecting statements. But their movements suggested something more. The aircraft, a metal carcass on the mountain plateau, became a crime scene, and a miracle simultaneously. Emma moved with calculated grace, not avoiding attention, not seeking it, simply existing in a space between revelation and mystery. Her background began to leak, carefully, strategically classified missions, aerospace engineering breakthroughs, medical interventions in impossible scenarios, a career that existed in the shadows. The woman from the government team pulled Emma aside, away from cameras, away from witnesses. "We need to talk," she said. Tommy watched, fascinated. The young boy who had witnessed something extraordinary. News spread like wildfire. Social media exploded. A nation watched a story of survival unfold in real time. Fragments of Emma's past began to surface. Advanced degrees from institutions that didn't officially exist. Medical certifications from programs hidden from public view. Engineering innovations that had saved countless lives in scenarios most would never know about. Captain Reyes approached. No longer just a pilot, a witness to something extraordinary. "How did you do it?" he asked. Emma's response was simple. "We survived. The mountain plateau became a metaphor, a place where impossible became possible, where human potential transcended expected limitations. Government vehicles arrived, not local, not standard emergency response." Tommy's mother watched, protective, grateful, a woman who understood she owed her child's life to this extraordinary woman. Interviews began, carefully managed, controlled. Emma Rodriguez became more than a person, a symbol, a testament to human potential. Her encrypted device continued its silent communication. Networks activated, information flowing through channels most would never comprehend. The businessman former special forces began to piece together her story. Fragments of a career lived in the shadows. Rescue teams worked, but their focus seemed split. Part emergency response, part something deeper. The aircraft's failure was no accident, the government woman told Emma privately. A revelation, not a question. Emma's response was measured. Nothing is ever truly an accident. Passengers became unexpected witnesses, their stories adding layers to the narrative. The retired firefighter spoke of her precision. The medical professional noted her extraordinary intervention. Captain Reyes described her technical brilliance. Tommy became an unexpected media darling. The child who watched a superhero save everyone. News cycles spun. Experts analyzed. The world watched a story of survival that defied conventional understanding. Emma Rodriguez became more than a person, a symbol of human potential. Her tattoo, those mysterious coordinates, began to attract attention. A story within a story. Government briefings, controlled media appearances, a narrative carefully constructed, but beneath the surface, something deeper was happening. An investigation began, not just of the flight, but of Emma Rodriguez herself. Her life of carefully constructed anonymity was over. The world would know her story, or at least, the story they were allowed to know. Tommy approached her one last time before the final interviews. "Are you really a superhero?" he asked. Emma knelt to his level, smiled. "Sometimes," she said. "Survival is the most heroic thing we can do." The mountain plateau stood as a witness, a place where impossible became possible, where one woman's extraordinary skills transformed certain destruction into a miracle of human potential. Emma Rodriguez, the passenger, who was so much more, had changed everything, and her story was just beginning.